Chapter 16. The First Strategy Conference. "You are so stupid, it's amazing you can live," Billy was saying. We were at his house, playing his game, Stratomatic baseball. Steve and I had one team, Billy had the other. Naturally, Billy always fixed it so that he had Babe Ruth and Ty Cobb on his team. Naturally, Billy always seemed to win. "You don't start a war with a note," Billy said. "You think the Japanese sent a note before they attacked Pearl Harbor? 'Dear United States, pardon us, but we are going to sink all your ships. Sorry.'" "Are you sure your grandfather got the note?" Steve asked. "Yes, he couldn't miss it. It was right on his pillow." "Maybe it fell out when he took the bedspread off," Steve said. "Then where would it go?" I said. "On the floor? Out the window? It was a big piece of paper. It didn't just fly away." "You have to attack," Billy said. "Not just write a polite note, blam, drop a bomb, wham, hit him with a rocket." "I am not going to bomb my grandpa," I said. "Then what are you going to do?" Steve said in his slow and careful way. His eyes seemed to be laughing at me as he waited for me to answer. "I'll do something," I said. "Some war," Billy said. Meanwhile, he threw the dice, and his all-time all-star team scored 2 more runs on a double by Honus Wagner. "It's time you got started fighting." All of a sudden, something clicked in my head. Before I knew it, I began to laugh. Billy and Steve looked at me as if I'd gone nuts. "Thanks, Billy," I said. "Thanks a lot. Time I got started all right. Time sure enough." And then I told them what I was going to do. Chapter 17. Night Attack. I really figured that I wouldn't be able to sleep at all that night, but I was wrong. I set my AM/FM digital clock radio for 2 o'clock in the morning before I clicked off my reading lamp. I guess I must have tossed and turned for a while. My heart was beating thump-a-thump, very loud in my chest. To tell you the truth, I felt uncertain about what I was about to do to Grandpa. But to get back what was mine, I had to fight. All's fair in love and war, somebody said. I hope he wasn't the same guy who said respect your elders. I sneaked down the hallway like a thief in the night, tiptoeing past my parents' closed bedroom door and then Jennifer's. Outside of my old room, I stepped around the floorboard that always creaked so loud. Then I turned the doorknob as slowly as I could, opened the door, and went into the room. Even in the dark, I could see that Grandpa was lying on his back under the covers, fast asleep. He was breathing slow and easy, making a little whistling noise that ended in a snore. One of his feet poked out of the covers at the bottom of the bed. I walked very carefully around the floorboards I knew creaked and went to the dresser. Here was where I needed my pocket flash. I covered it with one hand and made sure the light went only on the little electric clock on the top of the dresser. This was the nasty part. I took the little clock and turned the alarm arrow so it pointed to 3 o'clock. I have to tell you that when the arrow went past 2 o'clock, it made such a loud click I almost jumped a foot in the air. Be brave, secret warrior, I told myself. Then I pulled out the alarm button on the back of the clock, set down my note smack on top of the dresser where even a blind man could see it, and got myself out of the room in a hurry. Upstairs, I jumped into bed, turned out the light, and settled under the covers to see what was going to happen. In less than an hour, that alarm clock was going to go off, and Grandpa would be awakened in the middle of the night. Be still, my heart. Chapter 18. The First Peace Conference. You know I couldn't fall asleep. It was kind of like waiting for a bomb to go off. I watched the seconds and minutes flip down on my digital clock radio. At 2:58 on my clock, I heard the alarm clock go off in Grandpa's room downstairs. It sounded like an angry bee buzzing, and it kept buzzing for about a minute. Then I heard Grandpa get out of bed, and the alarm stopped. Almost holding my breath, I waited. Now Grandpa would find the note. Then what would he do? Ignore me again? I heard the sound of Grandpa's door opening. Was he coming up here? Yes. Now I could hear the creaking of the wooden stairs as his slippered feet came slow and limping upstairs. I got down under the covers and pretended to be asleep. My door opened. I heard Grandpa come across and stand next to my bed. "Pete," he whispered. I kind of groaned a little like I was asleep and having a dream. Grandpa sat down on the edge of the bed. I felt his hand on my shoulder, shaking me gently. "Pete, come on, boy. I know you're not sleeping." "What?" I said, like I was just coming awake. "Grandpa, is that you?" Grandpa reached over and snapped on my reading lamp. I shielded my eyes against the sudden glare. Grandpa's white hair was all mussed and he looked very angry. "Do you know what time it is?" he asked. "Nighttime?" "The middle of the night," he said. "Mr. Secret Warrior, it's not funny, Pete. I don't like someone playing tricks on me this way, especially not my own grandson." "It's not a trick," I said. "It's a war." Grandpa shook his head. "Stuff and nonsense is what it is. You don't go to war against kin. You have to have an enemy to have a war, and I'm certainly not your enemy." "You got my declaration of war," I said. "Why didn't you say anything about it?" "I was kind of thinking it was a joke," Grandpa said. "It's no joke," I said. "You took something of mine and I want it back." "I didn't take anything," Grandpa said. "Your parents gave me a room, Pete." "You still got it, haven't you?" I said. A funny look crossed Grandpa's face. Chapter 19. A Flag of Truce. The next morning, Grandpa didn't come down to breakfast until almost 11 o'clock. And he wasn't dressed either, like he usually was. Mom gave him his breakfast of toast and coffee, and he sat at the table eating it and reading the newspaper. He didn't even so much as say good morning to me or anything, even though I was sitting right at the table with him. On the other hand, he didn't tell Mom anything about what had happened during the night. I was glad about that. In the afternoon, Mom took Jennifer off to buy her some new shoes. I was outside the house, throwing a tennis ball against the front steps, when Grandpa came limping out to the porch. He watched me throw for a while, watched me fumble the ball a few times. "Soft hands," he said. "You've got to make your hands real soft when you catch the ball, Pete. Yours are too stiff and hard. Are you nervous about catching it?" "Sure I am," I said, seeing as how I drop it so much. Grandpa grinned at that. "Soft hands are the secret, Pete," he said, then sat down on one of the porch chairs. I threw some more as Grandpa watched, trying to do what he said. Maybe I caught the ball a little better. I'm not sure. "Flag of truce?" Grandpa asked. "What's that?" "When two warring parties want to meet and talk things out, they put up a white flag of truce and then meet under it and have a powwow. How about it?" "Okay," I said, and sat down on a chair next to him. "Does the white flag mean you're surrendering?" "Certainly not. I just want to tell you a few things, okay?" "Shoot," I said. "I mean, let's talk." "Look, Peter, this situation is kind of out of my control, if you see what I mean." Grandpa looked down at his hands, which were big and knobby, and had these little brown spots all over. "I didn't want to come up here from Florida and take your room. No way I wanted to do that. It's just the way things worked out. You understand?" I nodded. "I didn't want to retire from my business, for that matter," Grandpa said. "But when Grandma got sick, that's what I had to do. Didn't want to move to Florida either, away from all the people I love, and I didn't want Grandma to die. It was lonely rattling around in that house we had down there, very lonely. So here I am, and I guess you're stuck with me." "I understand all that, Grandpa," I said. "Good," he nodded. "But I still want my room back." "Oh, Petey," he said, kind of shaking his head. "I think maybe you are a little spoiled. Maybe because you've always had everything you want." "I only want what's mine," I said. "Single-minded," he said.
just like your mother, your own room and everything. Let me tell you, when I was a boy, I had to sleep in the same bed with your Uncle Dave. Bad times, Petey, very hard times. We ate spaghetti a lot and beans, and I never had 2 nickels to rub together. If I got a penny, it was a big thing. A penny meant I could go to the store and buy candy, and I sure took a lot of time deciding which candy. Now look at you and Jenny. Great big house, lots of toys, good clothes, plenty to eat. You don't know about really wanting something and doing without, do you?
I know I want my room, and you've got it.
Stubborn,
Grandpa said, stretching the word out.
I think maybe it'll be good for you to do without, Petey. Really, I do.
So you're not changing rooms with me? I asked.
Nope.
Then the flag of truce is over, I said, getting up.
Come on, Grandpa said. Don't be that way. Sit down.
I've only got one thing to say, I told him as I walked off the porch. Watch out for my second attack. Chapter 20. A slippery customer. What I did was steal Grandpa's slippers. After dinner, on my way upstairs, I just stopped by my old room and took Grandpa's slippers from the bottom of the closet. I left a little note, too. This one was written in magic marker on a sheet of notepaper. It said, "I will not be defeated, but you will, the secret warrior." I had thought of doing some other tricky things to Grandpa, like putting a frog in his bed or a gerbil. But then I thought maybe the surprise would really get him scared and maybe even give him a heart attack. That can happen to people, you know, especially old people. They get a nasty shock, and bingo, heart attack city. I was at war with Grandpa, but I didn't want to kill him. I went to bed thinking about all that, but before I fell asleep, I heard footsteps coming up the stairs, real slow and limpy footsteps. Grandpa came in and snapped the overhead light on.
"Okay," he said gruffly. "Where are my slippers?"
"What slippers?" I said.
"The ones you stole, Petey boy."
Before I could answer, he went over to my closet and opened it. There were his slippers in plain sight, right where yours truly was dumb enough to leave them.
My, what have we here?" Grandpa said. "Looks like somebody's slippers."
He picked them up and looked at me, shaking his head a little, like he was disappointed.
"Are we all finished with the sneaky tricks now?" he asked.
I didn't answer.
"You think you're one slippery customer, don't you?" he said. "Lots of tricks."
"Not tricks," I said.
"Oh, no? What would you call stealing my slippers, then?"
"Guerrilla warfare." Grandpa looked at me, then began to laugh. That really annoyed me. Here I was in the middle of a war, and my enemy was laughing at me. "I don't think it's so funny," I said.
"Funnier than you think," Grandpa said. "Guerrilla warfare. Ha! Monkey shines would be more like it."
"You've got your slippers," I said. "You can go now."
"Petey, we've got to get this settled between us. Tomorrow, maybe. You go to sleep now, okay? But tomorrow we talk."
He leaned down over my bed and gave me a dry kiss on my forehead.
"Good night," he said.
"Good night," I said back to him. I wanted to say more, like I was sorry, but I didn't. A war is a war, I thought, and it does not end until one party surrenders.
"Guerrilla warfare,"
he said on the way out of my room. When he closed the door, he was chuckling to himself. It was then I began to think that I would probably lose the war. Grandpa was so nice. He would just ignore everything I did. And in the end, he would stay in my room and I'd be stuck up here forever. Some war this is, I thought. My enemy just kissed me goodnight. Chapter 21. Strategy and Supplies. "That's very revealing, you know," Steve was saying as we walked to the store. "He actually kissed you." "Yes, I said. It's psychological warfare, Steve said, and very clever of him. He's messing with your mind, Billy said. We were on our way to Dealtown, the store where we always bought school supplies. Steve needed more pens, index cards, and a notebook. I never knew a kid who used up so many school supplies as Steve did, or who loved school as much as he did. It was a little unnatural, if you ask me. I mean, school is okay, and besides, you have to go, but I always think that a few more holidays during the year wouldn't hurt anything. Steve thinks that a day without school is a rotten day. He's always reading books and taking notes on index cards. Whenever he sees a new word, he looks it up in the dictionary, writes it on an index card, and memorizes it. Grandpa is trying to out-nice you, Steve said. But he is nice, I said. There you are, Steve said. He's got you believing it already. Wait a minute, I said. Something's wrong here. Yeah, you are, Billy said. It's very simple, said Steve as we entered the store. You start a war Grandpa doesn't want to fight, so he just tries to be so darn nice to you that you'll forget the whole thing and call off the war. Isn't that it? No, I said. He's just a good, sweet man who loves me a lot, so he forgave my stealing his slippers and let me know by kissing me. That wasn't too bright, leaving his slippers in your closet, Billy said. You should have thrown them in the trash. I'd never do that, I said. Or burned them, Billy added. You can't burn slippers, I said. Positively Machiavellian, Steve said. He picked up a shopping basket. What's what you said? Billy asked. Machiavelli. He was this old Italian prince, Steve said. He figured out all the moves you can make on an enemy a long time ago. I'll bet your grandpa knows all about him. Steve put a spiral-bound notepad and a pack of index cards into the basket. He's not that way, I protested. Grandpa is just a great guy, that's all. Steve gave me one of those all-knowing looks of his, as if he were talking to a bird brain. Never underestimate your enemy, he said. I have to say this about my friend Steve. Sometimes, for a guy who is a great brain and all, he can be very dumb. So what are you going to do next? Billy asked. Probably nothing, Steve said. You're both wrong, I said. I'll do something. I still want my room back. Can you put a lock on the door so we can't get in? Billy wanted to know. No, I said. Steve took a 10-pack of ballpoint pens and put it into his basket. I'll tell you what I think, he said. I think the war is over, and you've lost. Chapter 22. Slapshot. When I came out on the porch after lunch, Grandpa was waiting. Let's meander, he said to me. I figure we have some talking to do. What about your leg? Well, Grandpa said, it's still attached to my body. I mean, doesn't it hurt when you walk a lot? Petey, he said, it hurts when I walk and also when I don't walk. So maybe I ought to get some exercise and the heck with my leg. We began to walk toward Beverly Road, the shopping street a few blocks away. Is this a flag of truce? I asked. There you go with that war business again, Grandpa said. Forget that. I'm not forgetting, I said. I declared war on you and I mean it. Pish-tosh, Grandpa said. I didn't know what that meant exactly, but I kind of got the idea. This isn't a war, he said. It's a disagreement, or maybe even a dispute. And what you're doing is starting a family feud. It is too a war, I insisted. You moved in and took over my territory, didn't you? Isn't that what wars are about? No, said Grandpa. Wars are about power and greed. And getting back what's yours, I said. Grandpa stopped walking, and I stopped too. His eyes seemed hard and cold when they looked at me. So you think war is perfectly okay? He said. Is that about it? Sometimes, I said. Like when? When you have to stick up for your rights, I said. Grandpa's mouth made a thin line as he shook his head.
That's wrong, Petey. There are lots of ways of settling arguments without going to war, peaceful ways.
I tried that with my parents. It didn't work. That's why I had to go to war with you.
Wrong, Grandpa said.
Not wrong, I said back to him. You took my room.
Listen, Pete, Grandpa said slowly. The only time you have to fight a war is when someone attacks you. Then, and only then, you have a right to defend yourself. You got that?
I thought about that for no more than a second. Wasn't I attacked? I said. Didn't they yank me out of my room and shove me away upstairs like I was some old chair or something? Grandpa sighed and looked away for a minute. I could see he was upset. It's just like Risk, I said. Someone invades your territory, you zap them. I felt Grandpa's bony hand on my arm.
War is no game, Petey, he said. Only kids and fools and generals think that.
You're my enemy, I said in a loud voice, and I want what's mine. I shook his hand off my arm. You marched in here like an army and kicked me out of whack. Grandpa's right hand came whipping out of nowhere and slapped me hard across the cheek. I was so shocked and surprised, I couldn't say anything. My cheek felt hot and burning. It hurt. Why do you hit me? I said. I had tears in my eyes, but I didn't cry.
War hurts, Grandpa said. War wounds and kills and causes misery. Only a fool wants war.
I stared into Grandpa's brown eyes that looked so mean to me now. I won't forget this, I said.
That's the idea.
And I won't forgive it either. From now on, we're really at war. I turned away and started back to the house, walking as fast as I could. I left Grandpa on the street, calling my name.